The silver chains burned where they touched Zephyr's wrists, each link searing through skin already raw from days of captivity. She stumbled as rough hands shoved her forward, her swollen belly throwing off her balance. 8 months pregnant, and they still used silver on her, as if she posed any threat, as if her Omega wolf could do anything but whimper in submission. Thunder cracked overhead as the double doors of the council hall groaned open. Rain hammered against the roof, leaking through gaps in the rotting beams. The Silverpaw Pack territory had been declining for years, but Zephyr had never seen the council hall look so decrepit, so perfectly matching the corruption festering within. "Move!" the guard grunted, his fingers digging into her upper arm. Zephyr's bare feet slipped on the wet stone floor as they dragged her down the center aisle. On either side, members of the pack she'd grown up with turned their faces away. Some looked ashamed. Most looked relieved it was her standing here and not them, relieved that the cursed Omega would finally be someone else's problem. At the front of the hall, seated behind a crescent-shaped table, the 5 council members waited like vultures. And there, standing to the side with his arms crossed and his jaw tight, stood Marcus. The father of her child wouldn't even look at her. Something inside Zephyr's chest cracked wider, the fissure that had started the day he'd stopped coming to see her, the day the whispers had begun. She'd told herself there was an explanation, that the man who'd whispered promises against her skin and sworn he'd never let anything hurt her couldn't have abandoned her, that he'd come back. Now, as she stood chained before the council with his baby moving inside her, Marcus stared at the wall above her head, as if she'd already ceased to exist. "Zephyr of no house," Council Elder Greaves intoned, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "You stand accused of carrying a cursed child, one prophesied to bring destruction upon the werewolf realm. Do you deny this?" Her voice came out hoarse from disuse. "I deny that my baby is cursed. The prophecy says she'll either save or destroy. That's not the same thing. It's not a risk we can take." This from her uncle, Council Elder Thane, who at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "The seers have spoken. The child cannot remain in Silverpaw territory. Then let me leave." Zephyr tried to step forward, but the chains jerked her back. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, sensing her distress. She forced her breathing to slow, forced calm she didn't feel into her voice. "Let us go. We'll never return. I swear it on the moon herself. That's not good enough." Greaves leaned forward, his eyes cold and calculating. "You are too much of a liability to simply release. However, there are those willing to take on such a risk, for the right price." The meaning hit her like a physical blow. "You're selling me. We're transferring custody of a dangerous Omega to those better equipped to handle her." Greaves's thin lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Semantics matter, girl. I'm not dangerous. I'm pregnant." The words ripped from her throat, raw and desperate. "I've never hurt anyone. My wolf has barely surfaced since you opened your legs for a warrior above your station." Council Elder Mara's voice dripped with disdain. "Since you tried to trap an honorable male with a pregnancy?" Zephyr's gaze snapped to Marcus. Finally, he looked at her. But there was no warmth in his eyes, no recognition of the nights they'd spent tangled together, no acknowledgement of the future they'd planned in breathless whispers. There was only cold dismissal. "I never touched her," Marcus said flatly. "She's been spreading lies, trying to claim I'm the father to elevate her position. I would never sully myself with an Omega." The world tilted. Zephyr's knees buckled, and only the guard's grip on her arm kept her upright. "You're lying," she whispered. "Marcus, please, tell them the truth. This is your daughter." "I have no daughter." Each word was a knife. "I don't know who you spread your legs for, but it wasn't me. You said you loved me." Tears burned hot tracks down her face, and she hated herself for them. hated that she was crying in front of these people who'd already decided her fate. You said we'd run away together, that you didn't care about pack politics or Omega status. I said nothing to you because I never betted you. Marcus's voice rose, playing to the crowd. You're delusional. Probably whatever male actually fathered that bastard drove you mad when he abandoned you. That's not my problem. The baby kicked again, harder, as if she could sense her father's rejection. Zephyr's hand went to her belly instinctively, protectively. Whatever Marcus was doing, whatever game he was playing to save his reputation, her daughter would pay the price. They both would. The matter of paternity is irrelevant, Greaves cut in smoothly. The transaction has already been arranged. The Blood Moon Kingdom has agreed to take custody of the Omega and her unborn child. They have facilities for such cases. The words hit like ice water in her chest. Zephyr's fingers dug into her palms until her nails drew blood. Blood Moon Kingdom. She'd heard the whispered stories. Omegas who disappeared into their breeding programs. Children raised as weapons. Her throat closed, each breath coming shorter than the last. Facilities. The word tasted like ash. Her voice came out smaller than she intended, barely above a whisper. Specialized care for unusual circumstances, Greaves said, not meeting her eyes. The Alpha King has particular interests in bloodline anomalies. A heavy purse thudded onto the table, then another, and another. Gold coins spilled from one, glinting in the torchlight. The metallic scent mixed with her own cold sweat. Zephyr's vision tunneled, black spots dancing at the edges as she counted the purses. Her hands began to shake, not from the silver poisoning this time, but from something deeper, more primal. 500 gold pieces. The number burned itself into her mind. I won't. Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard, tasting copper and fear. You can't! Greaves gestured to the guards without looking at her. Remove her! The scrape of boots on stone, heavy breathing behind her. Zephyr's heart hammered against her ribs so hard she was sure they could hear it. Her wolf clawed frantically inside her, weak but desperate, trying to break through the silver's suppression. Her wolf. But the silver had weakened her too much. The most she managed was a pitiful snarl before they wrestled her to the ground, careful not to damage her belly. The merchandise had to arrive intact. Through the tangle of bodies, she saw Marcus turn and walk away. He didn't look back, not once. They dragged her from the hall as rain poured through the broken roof, washing the gold on the table but unable to cleanse the corruption that had rotted the Silverpaw pack from within. Outside, a covered wagon waited, its wooden sides reinforced with silver bars. A cage on wheels. Please, Zephyr begged as they hauled her toward it, her bare feet scraping on the muddy ground. Please, I'll do anything. Just let my baby live. She's innocent. Please. No one answered. They threw her into the wagon like cargo, her body slamming against the silver-lined floor. Pain exploded through her side, and the baby went ominously still. Panic seized Zephyr's throat as she pressed her hands to her belly. Move, little one, she whispered frantically. Please move. Please be okay. After an endless moment that stretched into eternity, she felt it. A small flutter, then a stronger kick. Relief made her dizzy. The wagon door slammed shut, plunging her into near darkness. Only thin slats in the wooden sides let in slivers of stormy light. As the wagon lurched into motion, Zephyr curled around her belly, chains clinking with every movement. I'll protect you, she promised her daughter, her voice breaking. I don't know how, but I will. I won't let them hurt you. I won't let the prophecy define you. We'll find a way out of this. The baby kicked again, and Zephyr chose to believe it was agreement rather than distress. The journey to Blood Moon Kingdom took 3 days. 3 days of being jolted over rough roads, of eating stale bread through the bars, of relieving herself in a bucket while the guards laughed. The silver never left her wrists, burning constantly, keeping her wolf suppressed and her strength depleted. By the time the wagon rolled to a stop and voices rose outside, harsh, bartering voices discussing prices and merchandise, Zephyr had retreated somewhere deep inside herself. A place where the betrayal couldn't reach, where Marcus's lies couldn't wound, where her family's abandonment couldn't break her. She had to survive this. Her daughter needed her to survive this. The wagon door opened, and hands reached in to drag her out into blinding sunlight. The slave market existed in the bowels of Blood Moon Kingdom's capital, an underground cavern lit by torches and reeking of unwashed bodies, fear, and despair. Zephyr stood on a raised platform, her chains attached to a post, as potential buyers circled like sharks scenting blood. 8 months pregnant, the slaver announced, his voice carrying over the crowd. Omega. Healthy, strong bloodline despite her station. The child is part of the package, prophecy attached, could be valuable to the right buyer. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some interested, most derisive. A pregnant Omega was considered damaged goods, and one carrying a potentially cursed child even more so. But there were always those who saw opportunity in desperation. Zephyr kept her head up despite everything screaming at her to cower. They could chain her body, but they couldn't touch what burned in her chest. The fierce, feral love for her unborn daughter. The determination to survive this no matter what it took. A nobleman in silk robes approached, examining her like livestock. His fingers reached for her belly, and Zephyr snapped her teeth at him, earning a backhanded blow that split her lip. Spirited, the slaver said quickly, damage control in his voice. Needs proper training, but that can be arranged. The nobleman moved on, apparently unwilling to deal with a pregnant Omega who fought back. Others followed, examining and dismissing her in turn. With each rejection, the slaver's price dropped. With each drop in price, the quality of potential buyers worsened. By the time the bidding actually started, Zephyr had been on the platform for over an hour, her feet aching, her back screaming, the baby pressing heavy and low. The slaver was down to his reserve price, practically begging. 50 gold for the pair, come now, that's a bargain. The entire marketplace went silent. It happened all at once, like a collective held breath. Conversations cut off mid-word. Movement ceased. Even the torches seemed to gutter and dim as every head turned toward the entrance of the underground market. Zephyr felt it before she saw him, a presence that made her wolf sit up and take notice despite the silver suppression, despite her exhaustion. Power radiated through the cavern, ancient and absolute, making the hair on her arms stand up and her pulse quicken. Then he appeared at the top of the stairs leading down into the market, and Zephyr's world fractured and reformed around a single, impossible truth. Alpha King Finn. She'd heard stories about him all her life. The merciless, the immortal. The king who'd ruled Blood Moon Kingdom for 800 years, who'd built his throne on the bones of his enemies, who showed no compassion and accepted no weakness. A monster in the shape of a man. He stood at least 6.5 feet tall, broad-shouldered and powerful, moving with the fluid grace of a predator. Dark hair fell to his shoulders, framing a face of harsh angles and brutal beauty, strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, a mouth made for cruelty. But it was his eyes that trapped her, held her, refused to let her look away. Gold. Pure, molten gold, burning with an intensity that seared through the distance between them, and those eyes locked directly onto hers. The mate bond snapped into place like a physical blow, stealing the breath from Zephyr's lungs. Recognition blazed through every cell of her body, her wolf howling in joy and terror, her heart stuttering and racing. Impossible. This was impossible. Alpha King Finn couldn't be her mate. He was ancient, powerful, cruel, everything she wasn't. But her soul knew him with a certainty that transcended logic, that bypassed every rational thought. Mine, her wolf whispered. Ours. Mate. Finn descended the stairs slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. The crowd parted before him like water, pressing back against the cavern walls, making themselves as small as possible. His guards followed, massive warriors bristling with weapons, but he moved ahead of them, alone and unafraid. When he spoke, his voice rolled through the market like thunder, deep and absolute. "Who owns her?" The slaver stumbled forward, greed warring with terror on his face. "My lord, I have the papers of sale right here. A cursed Omega, sold by the Silver Paw Pack, 8 months pregnant with a prophesied child. I can offer you a very reasonable price." I didn't ask for a sales pitch. Finn reached the platform, and Zephyr found herself looking up into eyes that held centuries of pain and power. "I asked who owns her." "I do, my lord, but for you I could—" Finn moved. One moment he stood at the base of the platform. The next his hand had closed around the slaver's throat, lifting him off his feet. The slaver's words cut off in a choked gurgle. "Wrong answer," Finn said softly, almost gently. Then he squeezed. The crack of the slaver's neck echoed through the silent market. Finn dropped the body carelessly and turned to the crowd, his golden eyes sweeping over them. "Anyone else want to claim ownership?" Several men who'd been involved in bringing Zephyr here tried to slink toward the exits. They didn't make it far. Finn's guards moved with supernatural speed, blocking escape routes. The Alpha King gestured once, a sharp movement, and his warriors descended on the slavers with brutal efficiency. Blood sprayed across stone. Screams echoed briefly before being cut short. Zephyr watched, frozen, as Finn eliminated everyone who'd touched her, transported her, sold her, with the cold precision of someone who'd ended lives for centuries and lost count long ago. She should have been terrified. She was terrified. But underneath the fear ran something else, something primal and fierce. "He's protecting us," her wolf purred. "Our mate is protecting us." When the last body hit the ground, Finn turned back to Zephyr. He mounted the platform in one fluid movement, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell cedar and smoke and something wild. His hand reached out, and Zephyr flinched despite herself. The chains, the silver, the days of abuse, her body remembered pain. Finn paused, his expression flickering with something that might have been rage or might have been grief. When he moved again, it was slower, more careful. His fingers touched the silver shackles at her wrists, and his eyes began to glow. "These hurt you," he said. It wasn't a question. Zephyr found her voice, though it came out barely above a whisper. "Yes." The shackles shattered. They simply exploded into pieces, silver fragments falling away harmlessly, freeing her wrists for the first time in days. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. Zephyr swayed, and Finn's hands came up to steady her, careful not to touch her belly, infinitely gentle for someone who'd just killed half a dozen men. "You're safe now," he said, his golden eyes holding hers. "No one will hurt you again. I claim you under my protection. You are mine." The words should have frightened her. After Marcus, after being sold like cattle, being claimed by anyone should have sent her running. But the mate bond pulsed between them, warm and certain, and Zephyr's wolf sang with recognition. "I don't even know you," she managed. Finn's lips curved into something that might have been a smile on a less dangerous face. "You know me. You've known me since before you drew breath, and I've waited 800 years for you." Then, before she could process that impossible statement, before she could argue or flee or do anything, Finn bent and lifted her into his arms. He cradled her carefully, supporting her weight and her belly, holding her against his chest, as if she were something precious, rather than a cursed Omega, pregnant with another male's child. The marketplace erupted in shocked whispers as the Alpha King carried his mate toward the stairs, toward the light, toward a future Zephyr couldn't begin to imagine. "Wait," she said against his shoulder. "My baby, she's not yours. You know that, right? I'm pregnant with—" I know, Finn interrupted, his voice a low rumble she felt through his chest. And she is mine now. Any child you carry is mine to protect, mine to defend. That's what mates do. Zephyr's throat closed with unexpected emotion. After everything, the betrayal, the abandonment, the cruelty, here was someone claiming not just her but her daughter, offering protection without knowing anything about either of them beyond the bond. It was too much. It was impossible. It was everything she'd stopped believing in. As Finn carried her up the stairs and out into the sunlight, Zephyr closed her eyes and let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe they'd both been saved. The obsidian palace rose like a dark crown against the sky, its spires cutting through clouds that seemed perpetually drawn to this seat of power. Zephyr watched through the carriage window as they approached, her hands resting protectively on her belly, where the baby had finally settled after the chaos of the marketplace. Finn sat across from her, his golden eyes tracking her every movement with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. She should have been terrified. This morning she'd been chained in a wagon, sold like livestock. Now she sat in a carriage lined with velvet, claimed by the most feared alpha in the realm, hurtling toward a future she couldn't begin to predict. But the mate bond hummed between them, warm and insistent, whispering that she was safe, that she was home, that this dangerous male who'd killed without hesitation was somehow hers. "You're afraid," Finn said quietly. Not a question. Zephyr met his gaze, refusing to look away despite her racing heart. I'd be a fool not to be. Something that might have been approval flickered across his harsh features. Fear with sense is wisdom. Fear without thought is weakness. He leaned forward slightly, careful not to crowd her in the enclosed space. I won't hurt you, Zephyr. The bond won't allow it, and even without it, I would cut off my own hands before causing you pain. You killed 6 men without blinking, men who hurt you, who would have sold you to worse. His voice dropped lower, edged with barely contained violence. I would kill 600 more, 6,000, anyone who threatens what's mine. There it was again. Mine. The possessiveness should have grated, should have reminded her of being property, of being sold. But when Finn said it, the word carried different weight. Not ownership, but protection. Not chains, but shelter. I'm not a possession, she said anyway, because she needed to establish this now, needed him to understand. The bond doesn't make me yours to control. Finn's lips curved into something almost like a smile. No. The bond makes you mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to stand beside. There's a difference. He paused, his golden eyes searching hers. And it makes me yours in equal measure. You feel it too, don't you? The pull, the recognition. Zephyr's throat tightened. She did feel it, had felt it the moment their eyes met, that soul-deep certainty that transcended logic, but admitting it felt dangerous, like surrendering the last piece of herself that remained guarded. The carriage rolled through massive gates, and servants appeared from every direction, bowing low as Finn emerged. He reached back to help Zephyr down, his hand steady and warm, and she caught the shocked whispers that rippled through the gathered staff. The Alpha King brought home a female. She's pregnant. Is that his child? The mate bond. I can feel it from here. Finn's growl cut through the murmurs like a blade. This is Zephyr, my mate and your queen. Anyone who speaks of her with anything less than absolute respect will answer to me personally. Silence fell like a curtain. Zephyr found herself pulled gently but inexorably forward, into the palace, through corridors of polished black stone veined with silver that caught the torchlight. Everything here spoke of wealth and power, tapestries that must have cost fortunes, weapons displayed on walls that had likely ended kingdoms, floors so perfectly smooth they reflected like dark mirrors. They climbed a spiraling staircase, and Zephyr's legs trembled with exhaustion by the time they reached the top. Finn noticed immediately, sweeping her up into his arms before she could protest. "I can walk," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You've been through enough today." He carried her through an archway into chambers that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the kingdom, curtains of deep crimson framing the view. A bed large enough for 5 people dominated one wall, covered in furs and silks. Doors led off to other rooms. A bathing chamber she glimpsed, with a pool-sized tub already steaming. But what made her chest tighten was the cradle positioned near the bed. Hand-carved from dark wood, lined with soft blankets, clearly crafted with care and meant for your daughter, Finn said, following her gaze. "I had it brought up while we traveled." Zephyr blinked against the sudden burn of tears. "You don't even know if the prophecy is true. She might be nothing special. She might be completely ordinary. She's yours." Finn set her down carefully on the edge of the bed. "That makes her extraordinary by default." Before Zephyr could process that statement, a knock sounded at the door. 3 women entered at Finn's call, all carrying supplies, their movements efficient and professional. "Healers," Finn explained. "They'll tend to your wounds from the silver, make sure you and the baby are healthy." His jaw tightened visibly. "They'll need to examine you. I can stay or go, whichever makes you more comfortable." The consideration in the offer made something crack in Zephyr's chest. Marcus had never asked what made her comfortable. Her family had never cared about her preferences. But this ancient feared Alpha King stood in his own chambers asking permission, like her comfort mattered more than his authority. "Stay," she heard herself say. "Please." Relief flashed across Finn's face before he moved to stand by the windows, giving her space while remaining present. The healers approached with gentle hands and kind eyes, and for the first time in days, Zephyr felt her shoulders begin to unlock from their defensive hunch. The examination was thorough but careful. The burns on her wrists made the head healer hiss in sympathy, and she applied a salve that immediately cooled the fire in Zephyr's skin. They checked her belly, listening to the baby's heartbeat with satisfied nods, pressing gently to assess position and health. "Strong heartbeat," the eldest healer pronounced. "The little one weathered the journey well, but she's eager to arrive. I'd estimate 2 weeks, perhaps 3 at most." Zephyr's hand went to her belly. 2 weeks. She'd be a mother in 2 weeks, in this strange palace, bound to a male she'd just met. The enormity of it threatened to overwhelm her. "The mother?" Finn's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "How is she?" "Malnourished. Dehydrated. The silver poisoning will take time to fully heal, but with rest and proper care she'll recover." The healer met Finn's gaze directly, unafraid despite facing the merciless. "She's been through significant trauma, my lord. Her body needs rest, but her mind needs healing too." Finn nodded slowly, his expression darkening. "She'll have whatever she needs. Draw up a care plan, spare no expense." The healers bowed and withdrew, leaving Zephyr alone with her mate. The word felt foreign in her mind, too big and too permanent. Finn remained by the window, silhouetted against the fading light, giving her space to breathe. "You should rest," he said finally. "There are clothes in the wardrobe, all in your size. Food will be brought up shortly. Anything you need, tell the servants. Where will you sleep?" The question came out before she could stop it. Finn turned, his golden eyes catching the last rays of sunlight and burning like flames. "I have other chambers. I won't pressure you, Zephyr. The bond is new and you've been hurt. I can wait." Part of her was relieved. The larger part felt strangely bereft at the thought of him leaving. Her wolf whined in protest, wanting their mate close, wanting the safety of his presence. 800 years, she said, remembering his words in the marketplace. "You said you waited 800 years for me." Finn's expression shifted into something ancient and weary. "I was born in the first age of wolves, when our kind still remembered the old gods. I was 25 when a witch cursed me with immortality, a punishment for killing her son in battle." His voice carried the weight of centuries. "I've watched empires rise and fall. I've seen everyone I ever loved turn to dust. I stopped hoping for a mate 300 years ago, convinced the curse had stolen that from me too. He moved closer, stopping a respectful distance away. Then I felt it this morning, a pull I couldn't ignore, drawing me to that marketplace. I never attend slave auctions. I find them distasteful. But something made me go today, and when I saw you... His voice roughened. Every year of waiting made sense. You were worth all of it. Zephyr's throat closed. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust in the bond and the intensity in his eyes. But Marcus had looked at her with intensity too, had made promises, and those had all been lies. The baby's father, she said, needing him to understand. He was a warrior in my pack. Marcus. He told me he loved me, that we'd run away together, that he didn't care about pack politics. Her voice cracked despite her effort to keep it steady. When I got pregnant, he pretended I didn't exist. Then he stood before the council and swore he never touched me, called me delusional, let them sell me like cattle. Finn's growl resonated through the room, making the windows rattle. His eyes blazed pure gold, his wolf rising close to the surface. Give me his name again. Marcus. But... Marcus of Silverpaw Pack. Finn's voice dropped to something lethal and cold. I'll remember. The promise of violence should have frightened her. Instead, Zephyr felt a dark satisfaction curl in her chest. Someone cared that she'd been hurt. Someone was angry on her behalf. You can't just kill everyone who wrongs me, she said, but the protest was weak. Finn's smile was all teeth. Watch me. A knock interrupted the moment. Servants entered with trays of food, roasted meat, fresh bread, fruits and vegetables that made Zephyr's mouth water. They set up a small table near the windows, arranging everything with practiced efficiency before withdrawing. Eat, Finn said. Gentler now. You need your strength. Zephyr approached the table cautiously, unable to remember the last time she'd seen so much food at once. In her pack, Omegas ate least, survived on scraps. Here, the portions were generous, the quality obvious. Finn pulled out a chair for her, then took the seat opposite. He didn't eat, just watched as she tentatively began to try dishes, his expression satisfied each time she took another bite. You're not eating, she observed. I already ate today. This is for you. He poured her water, then added, The wine is excellent here, but not while you're pregnant. After the baby comes, I'll introduce you to our vintages. After the baby comes. As if he assumed she'd still be here, that this wasn't temporary, that they had a future stretching beyond the immediate crisis. The casual certainty of it made her chest tight. Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care about a cursed Omega pregnant with another male's child? The mate bond is it's just chemistry, just fate playing games. You don't know me. I don't know you. Why are you being kind? Finn was quiet for a long moment, his golden eyes searching her face. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute truth. Because you're mine, and I protect what's mine. Because the bond isn't just chemistry, it's souls recognizing each other across time and space. Because when I saw you standing on that platform, chained and pregnant and still defiant, I knew I'd burn the world down before I let anyone hurt you again. He leaned forward, his intensity pinning her in place. And because that child you carry is innocent of her father's sins, she's part of you, which makes her part of me now. I will love her as my own blood because she will be my daughter in every way that matters. Tears spilled down Zephyr's cheeks before she could stop them. All the fear and pain and betrayal of the past weeks, all the loneliness and desperation came pouring out in silent sobs. She tried to cover her face, ashamed of breaking down, but Finn was there, kneeling beside her chair, his hands gentle on her arms. It's all right, he murmured. You're safe here. Let it out. So she did. She cried for the girl who'd been betrayed by her lover, abandoned by her family, sold like property. She cried for the fear of bringing a child into a world that already wanted her dead. She cried for the loss of everything she'd known, even the bad, and the terrifying uncertainty of everything ahead. And through it all, Finn held her, his presence solid and unwavering, his hands steady, his voice a low rumble of comfort that slowly, gradually, began to ease the jagged edges of her pain. When the tears finally subsided, Zephyr found herself leaning against his chest, exhausted but lighter. The baby kicked gently, as if reminding her that she wasn't alone, that she had to keep going for both of them. "I'm sorry," she whispered against his shoulder. "Never apologize for feeling." Finn's hand came up to stroke her hair, the gesture surprisingly tender. "You've survived horrors. You're allowed to grieve them." They stayed like that as twilight deepened into night, as the palace settled around them, as something fragile but real began to take root between them. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The promise that maybe, despite everything, they could become something together. Finally, Finn pulled back, his expression reluctant. "You need sleep. Real rest, in a real bed, without fear." Zephyr nodded, suddenly aware of how heavy her limbs felt, how her eyes wanted to close. But as Finn stood to leave, panic fluttered in her chest. "Don't go." He froze, turned back to her. "Zephyr, please. I know you said you'd give me space, and I appreciate that, but—" She swallowed hard, forcing herself to be honest. "I don't want to be alone tonight. Just stay. You don't have to touch me. Just be here." The fierce joy that blazed across Finn's face made him look younger, less burdened by centuries of solitude. "Always," he said simply. "Whenever you need me, I'm here." Zephyr woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the unfamiliar comfort of a bed that didn't hurt her back. For a blissful moment, she forgot where she was, forgot everything that had happened. Then the baby kicked, reality crashed back, and she remembered. The Alpha King, the mate bond, the palace, Finn. She turned her head and found him sprawled in a chair beside the bed, too large for the furniture, his head tipped back in sleep. He'd kept his promise, stayed without pressuring her, remained close without imposing. Even unconscious, he managed to look dangerous, all harsh angles and coiled strength. But there was something vulnerable about him like this too, unguarded in a way she suspected he rarely allowed. Lines of weariness marked his face, and she wondered when he'd last truly rested, truly felt safe enough to lower his defenses. The baby kicked again, harder, and Zephyr winced. Her daughter was running out of room, getting restless. 2 weeks, the healer had said. Maybe 3. "You're awake!" She jumped at Finn's voice, finding his golden eyes open and fixed on her. How long had he been watching? "Sorry if I woke you," she said. "You didn't. I'm a light sleeper." He stretched, bones popping, then stood with fluid grace. "How do you feel? Truthfully?" Zephyr felt better than she had in weeks. The bed had been soft, the room warm, and for the first time since her capture, she'd slept without fear. The burns on her wrists had faded to pink marks under the healer's salve, and the oppressive weight of silver poisoning had lifted. "Better," she admitted. "Much better." Satisfaction flickered across Finn's face. "Good. There are clothes in the wardrobe. Choose whatever you like. I'll have breakfast brought up and then—" He hesitated. "I thought you might like to see the gardens. Fresh air, sunshine, unless you'd rather rest more." The consideration in his voice made her chest warm. "Gardens sound nice." He nodded, moving toward the door. "I'll arrange it. Take your time." After he left, Zephyr explored the wardrobe, finding dresses in soft fabrics, all cut to accommodate her pregnant belly. She chose a simple gown in deep green, marveling at the quality of the material, the careful stitching. Everything here spoke of wealth beyond imagination, yet Finn wore his power casually, as if 800 years had taught him that material things meant nothing. Breakfast was generous again: eggs and bacon, fresh pastries, fruit that must have cost a fortune this late in the season. Zephyr ate slowly, savoring every bite, while her daughter performed acrobatics inside her that suggested the baby inherited someone's impatience. When Finn returned, he'd changed into simpler clothes, though even casual garments couldn't disguise the lethal grace in his movements. He offered his arm, and Zephyr took it, grateful for the support as they navigated stairs and corridors. The palace gardens were breathtaking. Despite the autumn chill in the air, flowers still bloomed in profusion. Roses and chrysanthemums, late-season lilies, herbs that filled the air with fragrance. Paths wound between carefully tended beds, and at the center, a fountain splashed crystal-clear water into a pool where fish flashed golden and red. Zephyr breathed deeply, feeling tension she hadn't realized she carried begin to ease. Open sky stretched overhead, sunlight warming her skin, and for a moment, she could almost forget the prophecy, the danger, everything except the simple pleasure of being outside. "It's beautiful," she said. Finn guided her to a bench near the fountain, settling beside her but maintaining careful distance. "My mother planted the first roses here, 600 years ago. I've maintained the garden in her memory." His voice held old grief. "She would have liked you. She always said I needed someone who wouldn't be intimidated by my temper." Zephyr studied his profile, this ancient being who'd lived through centuries she couldn't imagine. What was she like? Strong, kind, ruthless when necessary. Finn's lips curved into a sad smile. "She ruled beside my father as an equal, not a subordinate. When he died in battle, she held the kingdom together through sheer force of will until I was old enough to take the throne. Then she—" His voice roughened. "She chose to walk into the sunset, as our kind call it, to die on her own terms rather than slowly fade." "I'm sorry," Zephyr said quietly. "It was 400 years ago. Time doesn't heal those wounds, but it teaches you to carry them." He turned to face her fully. "I tell you this because I want you to understand what I'm offering. Not ownership, not dominance. Partnership. The kind of bond my parents had, where both stand equally strong." Before Zephyr could respond, the baby kicked hard enough to make her gasp. Finn's eyes dropped to her belly, concern immediate in his expression. "She's active today," Zephyr explained, her hand going to the spot where tiny feet pressed against her skin. "She's running out of room." "May I?" Finn asked, his hand hovering near her belly. Zephyr nodded, curious. He placed his palm gently against her stomach, and the baby kicked directly into his hand. Wonder transformed his harsh features into something almost soft, and Zephyr's heart stuttered at the sight. "Strong," he murmured. "She'll be a warrior, or a scholar, or an artist, or anything she wants to be." Zephyr covered his hand with hers. "I won't let the prophecy define her." Finn's golden eyes met hers, fierce with promise. "Neither will I." The moment stretched between them, intimate and charged, the mate bond humming with approval. Zephyr felt herself leaning closer, drawn by something more than chemistry, more than fate. The arrow struck the ground 3 inches from Finn's boot. Everything happened at once. Finn surged to his feet, pushing Zephyr behind him. More arrows hissed through the air, black-fletched and silver-tipped. Guards materialized from nowhere, forming a protective circle, and from the shadows at the garden's edge, figures emerged wearing familiar colors. Silverpaw colors. "No," Zephyr whispered, horror flooding cold through her veins. "No, they can't." "They can," Finn growled, his voice dropping into something inhuman. "And they'll die for it." 6 assassins rushed forward, moving with deadly precision. These weren't common fighters. These were trained killers, their movements coordinated, their weapons designed specifically to harm werewolves. Silver blades gleamed in the sunlight, and Zephyr caught the scent of wolfsbane on the air. Finn's guards engaged immediately, but the assassins had planned well. They fought in pairs, covering each other, exploiting weaknesses, driving toward their target, toward Zephyr. The prophecy dies here, one assassin snarled, breaking through the defensive line. His blade arced toward Zephyr's belly, and time seemed to slow. She couldn't move fast enough, couldn't protect herself, couldn't. Finn appeared between them like a thunderclap. His transformation was instant and violent. One moment he stood as a man, the next his wolf erupted forth, massive beyond reason, black as midnight, with eyes that burned gold like dying stars. He was easily the size of a horse, his fangs as long as daggers, his presence radiating such raw power that even his own guards stumbled back. The assassin's scream cut off as Finn's jaws closed around his throat. Blood sprayed across the garden flowers, turning roses red for a different reason. Finn dropped the body and turned on the remaining assassins with something beyond rage. Ancient, primal fury that had been building for 800 years of solitude. He tore through them like they were made of paper. Claws ripped through armor, fangs crushed bones, his roar shaking the palace walls. It wasn't a fight. It was a massacre. Within moments, bodies littered the beautiful garden, and Finn stood among them, his black fur matted with blood, his sides heaving. This was the monster everyone feared, the merciless, the king who'd built his throne on corpses and ruled through terror. This was why kingdoms trembled at his name. Finn's burning gaze fixed on Zephyr, and she saw him tense, saw him prepare for her to scream, to flee, to reject the monster he'd revealed himself to be. Instead, Zephyr stepped forward. Her hands shook, her heart raced, but she walked through the carnage until she stood directly before him. Finn's wolf was so large she had to look up to meet his eyes, had to reach high to touch his face. "Thank you," she whispered, her palm pressing against his blood-soaked fur. "You saved us. You saved our daughter." The tension drained from Finn's massive form. He lowered his head, pressing his forehead gently against her pregnant belly, careful despite his size. The baby kicked against his muzzle, and Zephyr would have sworn she saw Finn's wolf smile. Then he shifted back to human form, kneeling naked and blood-covered in the ruined garden, his hands coming up to cup her face. "Are you hurt?" His voice was raw. "Did they touch you? Tell me." "I'm fine. We're fine." Zephyr covered his hands with hers, anchoring him. "You stop them. I'll always stop them." Finn pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "Anyone who threatens you, anyone who comes for our daughter, I will end them. All of them. I don't care if I have to burn their kingdom to ash. Our daughter." He'd said it so naturally, claimed her child so completely, that Zephyr's throat closed with emotion. "My lord," one of the guards approached cautiously. "We've secured the perimeter. No other attackers. But—" He hesitated. This was coordinated. Professional. They had inside information about the palace layout. Finn's expression went cold and lethal. "Find the traitor. Question everyone. And send word to Silverpaw Pack." His voice dropped to something that promised death. "Tell them their assassins failed. Tell them I'm coming." The guard paled but nodded, hurrying away. Around them, more guards appeared, cleaning the carnage with practiced efficiency. Zephyr was gently guided inside, Finn staying close, his hand never leaving her back. They ended up in what Finn called a safe room, deep in the palace interior, surrounded by stone walls 2 feet thick, with guards stationed at every entrance. Finn prowled the space like a caged predator, his rage barely contained, while Zephyr settled on a cushioned bench and tried to process what had happened. They'd come for her. Her former pack had sent assassins to kill her and her baby. If Finn hadn't been there— "Don't," Finn said, suddenly kneeling before her again, his hands gentle on her knees. "Don't think about what could have happened. You're safe. That's all that matters." "For how long?" Zephyr heard the tremor in her voice. "If they found me once, they'll try again. And next time I'll be ready. Next time they won't get within 100 yards of you." His golden eyes blazed with promise and threat. And soon, there won't be a next time, because I'm going to eliminate the threat at its source. The determination in his voice made her shiver. He meant it. He would march on Silverpaw territory, would destroy her former pack, all to keep her safe. I don't want you to start a war because of me, she whispered. Finn's smile was all teeth and danger. Too late. They started this war the moment they hurt you. I'm going to finish it. He stood, beginning to pace again, his tactical mind clearly planning violence. Zephyr watched him, this ancient king who'd claimed her so completely, who'd killed without hesitation to protect her, who'd called her daughter ours like it was the simplest truth in the world. She should have been frightened of him. Instead, she felt safer than she ever had in her life. The baby kicked again, and Zephyr placed her hand over the movement, silently promising her daughter that no harm would come to her. Not with Finn standing guard, not with a mate who would burn kingdoms for them. Outside the safe room, she heard guards moving, heard Finn's advisors being summoned, heard the palace transforming into a fortress. The peaceful morning had shattered, but from the fragments, something new was emerging. A queen who wouldn't be intimidated, a king who'd found something worth fighting for, and between them a bond that would reshape the realm. The war had begun, and Zephyr discovered that she was ready for it. Night had fallen by the time Finn declared the palace secure enough to return to their chambers. Zephyr moved through the corridors in a daze, exhaustion pulling at her limbs, the baby heavy and restless inside her. The attack had drained her more than she wanted to admit, fear taking a toll that her body couldn't easily recover from. Finn seemed to sense her weakness, finally sweeping her into his arms despite her half-hearted protest. I can walk, she mumbled against his chest. You can, but you don't have to. He carried her with ease, his warmth seeping into her cold skin. You've been through enough today. In their chambers, servants had prepared a bath, the enormous tub filled with steaming water scented with herbs meant to soothe and heal. Finn set her down carefully, then moved toward the door. I'll give you privacy. Stay. The word came out before Zephyr could think better of it. Please. I don't want to be alone. Finn turned back, his expression unreadable. Are you sure? She nodded, suddenly certain. The mate bond pulled between them, warm and insistent, and after the violence of the day, she craved the comfort of his presence. Finn helped her undress with careful hands, his touch clinical despite the intimacy of the act. Then he lifted her into the bath, the hot water immediately easing the ache in her muscles. Zephyr sighed in relief, sinking deeper, her pregnant belly rising like an island above the surface. Better? Finn asked, kneeling beside the tub. Much. She watched him through half-closed eyes, this deadly king attending her with such gentleness. You don't have to stay there. The tub is big enough for both of us. Something heated flashed in his golden eyes. Zephyr, I trust you. And she did, she realized with surprise. Despite everything, despite knowing him for less than 2 days, she trusted him not to hurt her. Join me, please. Finn stripped with efficient movements, and Zephyr glimpsed the warrior's body beneath the clothes, muscle and scars, strength and violence written in every line. Then he slipped into the water across from her, careful not to crowd her, his legs bracketing hers beneath the surface. They sat in silence for a while, the steam rising between them, the herbs working their magic on Zephyr's battered body. The baby settled, finally calm, and Zephyr felt her own tension beginning to unwind. Tell me about your life, she said eventually. Before today, before you found me. Finn was quiet for so long she thought he might refuse. Then he began to speak, his voice low and measured, telling her about 8 centuries of existence. The wars he'd fought, the kingdoms he'd seen rise and fall, the slow hollowing of his heart as everyone he loved turned to dust while he remained unchanged. I stopped letting people close 300 years ago, he said. It hurt too much to watch them age and die while I stayed frozen. I became what they called me. Merciless, cold, more weapon than man. His golden eyes found hers. I thought I'd exist like that forever. Then I felt you, and everything changed. Zephyr's throat tightened. I'm mortal, Finn. Eventually, You're my mate. The bond will tie your life to mine. He leaned forward, his hand finding hers beneath the water. You won't age as humans do. Our daughter won't either. The mate bond is ancient magic, Zephyr. It changes things. The implications of that staggered her. Not just a lifetime together, but centuries. An entire future she'd never imagined, stretching forward into possibilities she couldn't comprehend. I don't know if I can be what you need, she whispered. I'm just an Omega. I don't know how to be a queen, how to rule, how to be your equal. Finn's grip tightened on her hand. You stood defiant in chains with nothing left to lose. You challenged me when everyone else bows and scrapes. You saw me covered in blood, having just slaughtered 6 men, and you reached out to touch me instead of running. His voice roughened. You're already everything I need. The rest is just details. The water had cooled by the time they finally emerged. Finn wrapped Zephyr in towels soft as clouds, then helped her into a nightgown before pulling on sleep clothes of his own. The domesticity of it felt surreal. This ancient, deadly king helping her dress, turning down the bed, making sure she was comfortable. But Zephyr still felt restless, wound tight with lingering fear and adrenaline. The attack kept replaying in her mind. The arrows, the assassins, how close she'd come to losing everything. I can't sleep, she admitted as Finn settled into the chair beside the bed again. Every time I close my eyes, I see. I know. He stood, moved to the bed, lay down on top of the covers beside her. I'll stay right here. Nothing will hurt you. I promise. Zephyr turned to face him, studying his harsh features in the moonlight streaming through the windows. Do you ever sleep? Not much. Not peacefully. His hand came to rest on the mattress between them, close but not touching. Too many nightmares. What do you dream about? Losing things. Losing everyone. His golden eyes met hers. Tonight, I'll dream about losing you. The raw honesty in his voice made her chest ache. On impulse, Zephyr took his hand, threading their fingers together. I'm right here. We're safe. Finn's thumb stroked across her knuckles, the gentle touch at odds with hands that had torn through enemies hours ago. Tell me about you, he said quietly. Not the pain, not the betrayal. Tell me who you were before all that. So Zephyr talked, surprising herself with the memories that surfaced. She told him about her childhood, the small joys she'd found despite being an Omega, in a pack that valued strength above all. She'd loved reading, had stolen books from the pack library and hidden them to study in secret. She'd loved running through the forests, feeling her wolf stretch and surge even though she'd never be strong enough to rank. She told him about the dreams she'd had, foolish dreams of leaving the pack, finding somewhere she could just exist without the weight of others' expectations and scorn, dreams of being valued for something other than her designation. You can have that here, Finn said when she finally fell silent. Anything you want, books, teachers, freedom to explore. This is your home now. Shape it however you like. The offer was too big, too generous. Zephyr didn't know how to accept it, but lying there in the darkness, their hands joined between them, she felt something shift. Not love, not yet, but the foundation of it, the possibility that maybe, despite everything, they could build something real. The baby kicked gently against her ribs, and Zephyr guided Finn's free hand to the spot. He went still as he felt the movement, his expression transforming into wonder. She's strong, he murmured. She has to be. The prophecy. The prophecy says she'll save or destroy. Finn's golden eyes burned in the moonlight. We'll make sure it's save. We'll raise her to be strong and kind, powerful and compassionate. She'll reshape the world, But she'll do it on her own terms, not because some ancient seer decided her fate. The absolute certainty in his voice made Zephyr believe it was possible, that despite the danger, despite the prophecy hanging over them, her daughter could have a real life. A good life. "What do you want to name her?" Finn asked. Zephyr blinked in surprise. "You want me to choose?" "She's your daughter. You've carried her, protected her. The name should be yours to give." "Our daughter," Zephyr corrected softly, and watched Finn's expression crack with emotion. "She's ours now." They debated names as the moon tracked across the sky, as the palace settled into quiet around them, as the mate bond hummed with contentment. "Luna," Zephyr suggested, "for the moon that watched over wolves." Finn agreed immediately, his voice rough with approval. Luna. Their daughter would be Luna. Sometime before dawn, Zephyr finally felt her eyes growing heavy. Finn was still there, his hand on her belly where Luna rested, his presence solid and unwavering. For the first time in weeks, Zephyr allowed herself to relax, to trust that she was truly safe. "Finn?" she whispered, half asleep. "I'm here. Thank you. For everything. For saving us." His hand tightened on her belly, protective and possessive. "I'll always save you. That's what mates do." Zephyr drifted off with those words wrapped around her like armor, with Finn's warmth beside her, with her daughter quiet and content. And for the first time since her world had fallen apart, she felt something dangerous and precious unfurling in her chest. Hope. The attack came 3 days later, in the darkest hour before dawn. Zephyr woke to chaos, explosions rocking the palace, guards shouting, the clash of weapons echoing through stone corridors. Finn was already moving, dragging on clothes with one hand while hauling her out of bed with the other. "What's happening?" She stumbled, her pregnant belly throwing off her balance. "They're here." Finn's voice was cold and lethal. "Multiple kingdoms. Coordinated assault." He pulled her toward a hidden panel in the wall. "I'm getting you to the safe room." But before they reached it, the chamber doors exploded inward. Not broken down, exploded, fragments of ancient oak scattering across the floor in smoking pieces. Through the opening came figures crackling with magic, dark energy swirling around them like living shadows. "Warlocks," Finn snarled, pushing Zephyr behind him. They brought warlocks. One of the figures raised a gnarled hand, and tendrils of black magic lashed toward Finn. He dodged, moving with supernatural speed, but more tendrils came from different directions, herding him away from Zephyr, separating them. "No!" Zephyr tried to move toward him, but rough hands grabbed her from behind. She recognized the scent immediately. Silverpaw Pack. Her former packmates had infiltrated the palace. "Got her!" one of them shouted. Finn's roar shook the palace. He tried to shift, tried to call on his wolf, but the warlock's magic wrapped around him like chains, dampening his power. Zephyr watched in horror as the ancient king who'd torn through 6 assassins like paper struggled against dark magic that suppressed everything that made him powerful. "Finn!" His name ripped from her throat as they dragged her backward, toward the shattered doors. He fought like a demon, like something beyond mortal, breaking through the magic through sheer force of will. But there were too many warlocks, too much magic, and as he surged toward her, one of them struck him with a bolt of black energy that sent him crashing into the wall. "No!" Zephyr screamed, fighting her captors with everything she had. But she was pregnant, exhausted, weak from days of stress. They overpowered her easily, snapping silver shackles around her wrists. The burn was immediate and agonizing. The baby kicked frantically inside her, sensing the danger, and Zephyr felt something shift deep in her belly. Too early. This was too early. "Move!" The Silverpaw wolves dragged her from the chamber. Behind them, Zephyr heard Finn roaring her name, heard the sounds of him tearing through warlocks despite their magic. But they were already in the corridor, already running. The palace was chaos. Finn's guards fought desperately against invaders wearing colors from 3 different kingdoms: Silverpaw, Ironhide, Shadowfen. A coordinated assault, planned with precision, designed to breach defenses that should have been impenetrable. They hauled Zephyr through secret passages, routes someone had given them, confirming Finn's suspicion of a traitor. Down into the underbelly of the palace, toward an exit that led to the city streets where wagons waited. "Please," Zephyr begged, trying one last time. "Please, my baby. She's coming too early. She'll die if—" "That's the point," one of her captors said coldly. "The prophecy dies with her." They threw her into a wagon cage, silver-lined, painfully familiar. The door slammed shut, and Zephyr curled around her belly as the wagon lurched into motion. Behind them, the palace burned with magical fire, and somewhere in that inferno, her mate fought to reach her. The journey back to Silverpaw territory was agony. Every jolt of the wagon sent pain lancing through Zephyr's body. The baby had gone still, too still, and Zephyr didn't know if that was better or worse. The silver burned constantly, draining her strength, keeping her wolf suppressed, but worse than the physical pain was the emotional devastation. The mate bond stretched between them, pulled taut by distance, and through it, Zephyr felt Finn's anguish, his rage, his desperate, futile attempts to break free and come after her. Then, as they crossed into Silverpaw territory, something changed. The bond flickered, weakened, as if damaged by the dark magic still clinging to Finn. Zephyr gasped as the connection dimmed, suddenly feeling more alone than she ever had. "Finn," she whispered into the darkness. "Please, please find us." But only silence answered. They dragged her into the same dungeons where this nightmare had begun, threw her into the same cell where she'd waited to be sold. This time, though, the chains were heavier, the silver more pure, designed to keep even a strong wolf contained. Zephyr lay on the cold stone floor and felt her daughter beginning to move again, small, pained movements that suggested she was running out of time. Contractions started, faint but real, and Zephyr knew with terrible certainty that Luna was coming. And she was going to have to face this alone. The warlock's magic had burned through Finn's defenses, leaving him chained in his own palace as it burned around him. Dark energy wrapped around his limbs like living snakes, suppressing his wolf, dampening his power. But they'd made one critical mistake. They hadn't killed him. Pain meant nothing. The injuries covering his body were inconvenient distractions. What mattered was the bond stretching across the distance between him and Zephyr, growing thinner by the moment, threatening to snap entirely. Through it, he felt her terror, her anguish, the silver burning her wrists as they dragged her away. Finn had lived 800 years. He'd survived wars, plagues, betrayals, and curses. He'd watched everyone he loved turn to dust. But this, losing his mate, losing the future he'd just begun to believe in, this would destroy him more completely than any warlock's magic ever could. So he did something he hadn't done in 3 centuries. He asked for help. "Rowan!" His voice came out raw, damaged by smoke and magic. His second-in-command materialized from the chaos, blood streaming from a cut on his temple but alive, fighting. "Get these chains off me!" Rowan's eyes widened at the dark magic writhing around his king. "My lord, I don't care what it takes. Break them! Now!" Understanding flashed across Rowan's face. He called for the palace mages, what few remained after the warlock assault. Together, they worked frantically to unravel magic that had taken 5 warlocks to create. Every second burned like acid in Finn's veins, every moment knowing Zephyr was getting farther away. When the chains finally shattered, Finn surged to his feet with a roar that shook what remained of the palace walls. His wolf burst forth, larger than before, rage giving him strength beyond measure. The warlocks who'd dared remain to ensure he stayed contained found themselves torn apart before they could cast another spell. "Gather the army," Finn commanded, his voice carrying across the burning palace. Everyone who can fight. We march on Silverpaw territory. My lord, one of his generals protested, we need time to recover, to plan. Finn's golden eyes burned into him. They have my mate. They have my daughter. We march now, or I go alone and paint the realm red with anyone who stands between us. The general paled and bowed. Yes, my lord. Within the hour, Finn's forces assembled. Not just his own warriors, but wolves from across his kingdom who'd heard what happened, who understood what it meant when the Alpha King's mate was stolen. They came armed and ready, fury written on every face. Finn led them out at a pace that would have broken normal wolves, pushing through the night without stopping. The bond with Zephyr remained faint but present, a thread he followed like a compass pointing toward his heart. She was alive, still alive. He would reach her in time. He had to. They crossed into Ironhide territory at dawn. The border guards took one look at the army blackening the horizon and fled. Smart. Finn would have killed them without breaking stride. The Ironhide Alpha emerged from his fortress with his own forces, attempting to block their passage. He'd been part of the alliance that attacked Finn's palace, that stole his mate. Now, he would pay for that choice. Stand down, Finn, the Ironhide Alpha called out, trying for authority he no longer possessed. This doesn't concern you anymore. The prophecy child must be stopped. Finn didn't let him finish. He shifted mid-stride, his massive wolf form closing the distance in heartbeats. The Ironhide Alpha managed to shift as well, but he was outmatched from the start. Finn's jaws closed around his throat, and he bit down until bone crunched. The Ironhide forces scattered. Some tried to fight, most ran. Finn let his army handle them while he continued forward, leaving a trail of bodies behind him. Mercy was for those who hadn't touched his mate. These wolves had chosen their side. They burned Ironhide territory as they passed through it. Not the innocent civilians, not the villages of wolves who'd had no part in this, but the fortress, the Alpha stronghold, the barracks where the warriors had launched from. Those Finn set ablaze with his own hands. Let it stand as a warning. Word spread ahead of them like wildfire. The Alpha King marches. The merciless comes to reclaim what was stolen. Kingdom after kingdom had to choose. Stand with him or fall before him. Most chose wisely. Shadowfen's Alpha met them at the border with his warriors kneeling in submission. My lord, I was coerced into the alliance. I had no choice. You had a choice, Finn said coldly. You chose wrong. But I don't have time for you today. His golden eyes promised future reckoning. Stay out of my way. The Shadowfen Alpha pressed his forehead to the ground, accepting the temporary reprieve. Finn pushed past him, his army growing as wolves from conquered territories joined his march. He was a force of nature now, unstoppable and merciless, every step bringing him closer to Zephyr. Then, 3 days into their march, as they approached the borders of Silverpaw territory, the bond flared with sudden, searing pain. Finn stumbled, his wolf whimpering at the agony radiating through their connection. Zephyr was hurting, really hurting, pain unlike anything before. And underneath it he felt something else, the rhythmic waves of labor. Luna was coming. The knowledge drove Finn beyond reason. His mate was giving birth in a dungeon, surrounded by enemies, chained in silver. Every instinct screamed at him to reach her, to protect her, to be there when his daughter entered the world. He pushed the army harder. Rowan appeared at his side, worry etched on his face. My lord, the troops need rest. They can rest when she's safe. Finn's voice came out inhuman, more wolf than man. Not before. Then let me scout ahead. Plan our assault. No plan, no strategy. Finn's eyes blazed gold fire. We hit them with everything. We tear through their defenses like paper. And anything that stands between me and my mate burns. Rowan opened his mouth to argue, saw the futility, and nodded. As you command. The Silverpaw border came into view at twilight of the 4th day. They'd erected defensive fortifications, called in reinforcements, prepared for siege warfare. Finn looked at their walls and barricades with contempt. "Burn it," he commanded simply. "Burn it all." His mages stepped forward, calling up flames that roared to life with supernatural intensity. The wooden fortifications caught instantly, the fires spreading with unnatural speed. Screams rose from within as Silverpaw warriors scrambled to respond. Finn didn't wait. He shifted and charged, his massive wolf form hitting the burning barricades with enough force to shatter them. His army poured through behind him, a tide of fangs and claws and righteous fury. The battle was brutal and one-sided. Silverpaw forces fought desperately, but they'd never faced anything like this. An army led by an 800-year-old alpha, driven beyond sanity by the mate bond. Finn tore through their ranks like a scythe, through wheat, heading unerringly toward the dungeons where Zephyr's pain called to him through the bond. Behind him, his warriors set everything ablaze. The title's promise fulfilled itself with each passing moment. Finn literally burned their kingdom down, leaving nothing but ash and ruin in his wake. The dungeons came into view, and Finn felt Zephyr's pain spike again. Luna was coming now, coming fast, and his mate faced it alone in chains. His roar echoed across the burning battlefield, and even his own warriors flinched at the raw anguish in it. He would reach her, he would save them both, and then he would destroy everyone who dared touch them. The contractions came harder now, stealing Zephyr's breath, tearing screams from her throat. Luna was coming whether Zephyr was ready or not, whether anyone helped her or not. The silver chains burned her wrists, keeping her wolf suppressed, keeping her weak. But something was changing. Between contractions, Zephyr felt it, heat building deep inside her chest, spreading through her veins like liquid fire. Not the mate bond, though that still flickered distantly, barely there. Something older, something that had always been part of her but had never awakened. "Please," she gasped to the empty cell. "Please, someone help me." No one came. She was alone with her pain, with her daughter fighting to be born, with death waiting on the other side of these walls. Another contraction hit, and Zephyr screamed. Through her pain, she heard footsteps approaching, voices she recognized with dread. "The child comes," Marcus said from beyond the bars. "Perfect timing. We'll perform the ritual as soon as she's born." Rage flooded through Zephyr, momentarily eclipsing the pain. He spoke so casually about murdering their daughter, about sacrificing an innocent child to prevent a prophecy that might not even be real. "You won't touch her," Zephyr snarled. Marcus laughed. "You're chained and in labor. What exactly are you going to do to stop me?" The heat in Zephyr's chest flared hotter. The silver chains burned her wrists, but underneath that pain, power stirred. Ancient power, dormant for so long she hadn't known it existed. The prophecy wasn't about Luna alone, it was about Zephyr too. Her bloodline stretched back to the first wolves, the original shifters who'd walked the earth when magic still ran wild and free. Generations of suppression, of being forced into the Omega designation, of abuse and silver poisoning, all of it had locked that power away so deeply, even she hadn't sensed it. But Luna's imminent birth cracked something open inside her. The fierce primal need to protect her child broke through every barrier, every chain, every limitation that had been placed on her. The silver shackles began to glow. "What?" Marcus's voice held sudden uncertainty. The heat became unbearable, became agony, became transformation. Zephyr threw her head back and screamed, but this time it wasn't just pain. It was power erupting from every cell. The chains didn't just break. They exploded into fragments, silver dust falling like snow around her. Light blazed from Zephyr's body, silver white and blinding. Her wolf surged forward, but not the weak Omega wolf she'd always known. This was something else entirely, something ancient and powerful that recognized no submission, no hierarchy, no chains. Marcus stumbled backward. "No, this isn't possible. You're an Omega." "I was never an Omega," Zephyr said, her voice layered with power that made the stones tremble. I was something you tried to suppress, something you feared. Another contraction hit, and Zephyr rode it out standing now, her body thrumming with newfound strength. Luna was coming, and Zephyr would deliver her daughter herself, would bring her into the world in a blaze of silver light rather than fear and chains. The cell door hung open. Marcus and the Silver Paw Alpha stood just beyond it, flanked by guards. They'd come to take Luna for the sacrifice. Now they faced something they hadn't prepared for. Zephyr's wolf rose to the surface, and when she shifted, her form was larger than any Omega had a right to be, silver-furred and radiant with power that had been sleeping for generations. She advanced on them, and they retreated despite their numbers. "Get the warlocks!" the Silverpaw Alpha shouted. "Contain her!" But the warlocks were all dead or scattered, their magic spent on containing Finn. And Zephyr's power came from a source older than warlock magic, deeper than spells and incantations. This was blood magic, ancient pack bonds, the power of the first wolves who'd needed no moon to shift. She shifted back to human form as another contraction seized her, dropping to her knees. Not from weakness now, but from Luna's insistence. Her daughter wanted to be born, demanded to enter the world, and Zephyr would give her that. "You're too late," she gasped at Marcus as her body began the final stage of labor. "Too late to hurt us. Too late to prevent the prophecy. Too late for anything but dying." Through the bond, distant but growing stronger, she felt Finn's approach, felt his rage and determination, felt him tearing through Silverpaw defenses like they were nothing. He was coming. He would be here soon. But Luna couldn't wait. Zephyr bore down, her body taking over, instinct and power guiding her. Pain became purpose, agony became strength. She'd survived being sold, being chained, being stolen from her mate. She would survive this too, and her daughter would enter the world free and powerful and protected. Luna came in a rush of blood and light, her first cry piercing and strong. Zephyr caught her own daughter, pulled her to her chest, and felt the last chains of her old life shatter completely. She wasn't a weak Omega anymore. She wasn't helpless or powerless or anyone's victim. She was a mother, a mate, something the prophecy had spoken of without anyone understanding. Light blazed from Luna's small body, silver bright and pure. The baby's eyes opened, impossibly aware for a newborn, and Zephyr saw ancient wisdom in them. Her daughter was special, was powerful, was everything the prophecy promised and more. "Give her to us," the Silverpaw Alpha demanded, trying for authority he no longer possessed. "The ritual must be completed." "Touch my daughter," Zephyr said softly, rising to her feet with Luna cradled against her chest. "And I'll show you what the prophecy really means." Her power flared again, and the dungeon walls cracked. Above them, the sounds of battle grew closer. Finn's roar echoed through the compound, and the mate bond suddenly blazed to life, no longer suppressed, burning bright and true between them. He was here, and together, they would end this. Finn tore through the dungeon entrance as Zephyr emerged from the depths, his mate radiant with power he'd never sensed before. Their newborn daughter wrapped in her arms and glowing like captured moonlight. The mate bond blazed between them, but it had changed. No longer a connection between an ancient king and a suppressed Omega, but between two beings of equal complementary power. Their eyes met, and the world stopped. Then Finn was moving, closing the distance between them, his arms coming around both Zephyr and Luna, pulling them against his chest. The reunion sent shockwaves rippling outward, the mate bond between two powerful beings, creating a physical force that leveled what remained of the Silverpaw stronghold's walls. "You came," Zephyr breathed against his shoulder. "Always." Finn pulled back just enough to see her face, to see their daughter. "I'll always come for you, both of you." His golden eyes swept over Zephyr, seeing the transformation, the power radiating from her. "You awakened." "Luna woke me up." Zephyr's smile was fierce and beautiful. The prophecy was never just about her. It was about us. All of us. Luna stirred in her arms, and Finn looked down at his daughter for the first time. She was perfect, tiny and strong, with eyes that held ancient wisdom and power that would reshape the world. When she looked at him, recognition blazed in her infant gaze. Father, something whispered in his mind. Not words, but understanding. Luna knew him, accepted him, claimed him as completely as he claimed her. "Hello, little moon," Finn whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm here now. Nothing will hurt you again." A snarl from behind them broke the moment. Finn turned, placing himself between his family and Marcus, who'd emerged from the dungeons with the Silverpaw Alpha and their remaining guards. "This isn't over," the Silverpaw Alpha spat. "The prophecy still stands. That child will destroy us all." "No," Zephyr said, stepping up beside Finn, power crackling around her like lightning. "The prophecy says she'll save or destroy. We're choosing save, but you've already chosen destroy. You destroyed your own pack with corruption. You destroyed any chance of mercy when you chained a pregnant woman and tried to murder her child." Marcus stepped forward, and Finn's growl made the ground tremble, but Zephyr placed a hand on his arm, stilling him. "He's mine," she said quietly. "Let me finish this." Finn wanted to argue, wanted to tear Marcus apart himself for what he'd done to Zephyr. But he saw the need in his mate's eyes, the requirement to face her betrayer herself, and he nodded. "He's yours." Zephyr handed Luna to Finn, their daughter settling immediately against his chest, recognizing safety. Then she advanced on Marcus, power building around her with each step. "You told me you loved me," she said, her voice carrying across the battlefield. "You made me believe I was worth something. Then you stood before the council and called me delusional, let them sell me like cattle, sent assassins to murder our daughter." Marcus tried to look defiant, but fear flickered in his eyes. "You were nothing. You are nothing. I was everything you feared." Silver light blazed from Zephyr's hands. "And now I'm going to show you mercy, because unlike you, I don't enjoy cruelty." She moved faster than Marcus could track, her hand plunging through his chest and crushing his heart. It was quick, cleaner than he deserved, over in seconds. His body dropped, and Zephyr turned away without a second glance. The Silverpaw Alpha backed away, but Finn's army had him surrounded. There was nowhere to run. "Please," he begged, all his earlier arrogance gone. "I was just trying to protect my pack." "By selling innocents?" Rowan stepped forward, his sword drawn. "By allying with warlocks and attacking your neighbors?" He looked to Finn. "My lord, your judgment?" Finn could have killed him, should have killed him. But Luna stirred in his arms, and he felt Zephyr's desire through the bond, not for more death, but for justice, for change. "You'll stand trial," Finn said coldly. "Every corrupt council member, every wolf who participated in selling Zephyr or attacking us. They'll face judgment from the assembled kingdoms, and their own people will decide their fate." It was a mercy they didn't deserve, but it was also smart politics. The werewolf realm needed to see justice, needed to know that corruption wouldn't be tolerated, needed examples that didn't involve Finn simply burning everything to the ground. Though he'd certainly done enough of that already. Silverpaw territory burned around them, the title's promise fulfilled in ash and ruin. Zephyr returned to his side, and together they stood among the wreckage as Finn's warriors secured prisoners and his mages contained the fires. Luna made a small sound, and both parents looked down at her with expressions of fierce protectiveness. "The prophecy," Rowan said carefully, approaching with respect. "What does it mean now?" "It means change," Zephyr said, her power still radiating around her like moonlight. "The werewolf realm has been fractured for too long. Corrupt alphas, hierarchies that oppress instead of protect. Omegas treated as property instead of pack members." Her eyes found Finn's. "We're going to fix it. Together." "Together," Finn agreed, his free arm coming around her shoulders. "My mate and I will rule as equals. Our daughter will grow up in a realm where her power is celebrated, not feared, and anyone who doesn't like it. His golden eyes swept the assembled wolves with dangerous promise. Can challenge us and find out what happens. No one challenged. They'd all seen what happened to those who stood against the Alpha King and his mate. The bodies scattered across the battlefield told that story clearly enough. Over the following days, as Silverpaw territory was secured and prisoners were processed, Finn and Zephyr made their vision clear. The kingdoms that had allied against them faced consequences. Their alphas stripped of power, their territories reorganized, their people given voice in who ruled them. It was revolutionary, unprecedented, and absolute. Those who'd remained neutral or aided Finn received different treatment. Shadowfin's alpha, who'd submitted immediately, kept his territory but swore oaths to the new order. Smaller packs who'd suffered under corrupt rule found themselves elevated, given representation, offered protection. The werewolf realm was being rebuilt from the ground up, and at its center stood the Alpha King and his mate, with their daughter as living proof that prophecies could be guided, that destiny was a choice, that power could be used to heal instead of harm. Luna thrived, growing stronger each day, her eyes tracking everything with unnerving awareness. She rarely cried, but when she did, both parents felt it through bonds they were still discovering. The three of them were connected in ways beyond normal mate bonds, beyond typical parent-child relationships. They were something new, something the realm had never seen, and they would use that power to reshape the world. Standing in the ruins of Silverpaw territory as the sun set, Finn pulled Zephyr close while Luna dozed against his chest. Tomorrow they would return to the Obsidian Palace and begin the real work of rebuilding, of creating a better world for their daughter to inherit. But tonight, they simply stood together, mate and mate, parent and parent, two beings of immense power choosing gentleness with each other. "I love you," Zephyr whispered, the words she'd been too afraid to say before finally finding voice. Finn's arms tightened around them both. "I love you. Both of you. For now. And always." Luna made a small, contented sound, and in that moment, the prophecy's truth became clear. She wouldn't save or destroy the realm. She would transform it, with her parents' guidance and love and fierce protection. Together, they had chosen save, and together, they would make it reality.